I just wanted to give you a quick intro into this podcast. It's a little different as it started off as a phone conversation that we turned into a podcast. So it's just going to hit the ground running with some out-of-context conversation, and I'm sorry, some swears. Anyway, here's our isolation binge watch episode. Enjoy.
I mean, it's pretty, what was I watching the other day? I was watching Gorky Park. I haven't seen Gorky
We're just going into... we got to save that for the show, but...
Yeah, you're right. Because I got a whole thing about Amazon Prime and that black hole of Amazon Prime.
Oh, shit, yeah.
That you can just go down, and I'm like, what the... I never promised you a rose garden is on here? I've never seen that. Now I need to.
Yeah.
And that'll become a thing.
All right.
But it was Lee Marvin and something, and then I looked him up, and I was like... Fuck me. Lee Marvin looks like he's about to die in this, and he's like 10 years older than me right now.
Yeah, I forget what I was watching recently, and it's like, oh, he's 5 years younger than me.
Yeah, I don't know what that says, but it's been like, oh, that's been enlightening. Holy shit. Fuck.
Yeah. What was I watching? Oh, it was something with Victor Buono. And
Victor Buono, wasn't he like 13 when he was on Man for Atlantis?
He was fucking in high school on Batman. Yeah, I was watching him on Taxi or something, and it's like, or no, I was watching on Man from Atlantis, and I was like 5 years younger than him, or 5 years older than him at the time.
You gotta start this when I said Gorky Park. Don't have any of the stuff before that we recorded.
Yeah.
Start the Gorky Park thing because it was Lee Marvin. It was 1983, or so it was made in like 82. And I think he was like 60 in it, and he looked. It's Lee Marvin, so he's tough as shit. He's been through a lot, but it was like, god damn, I thought he was, probably 80 in this movie. Like I didn't know he was. Maybe he was like 59 or something, because he died pretty young. He died at like 62, I think. In 86, he was 62.
What is it? They had steak and donuts for breakfast, as Phil Proctor used to say. Like,
they did, and he smoked his face off.
Yeah,
he didn't die from any of that. He died from some weird virus that was in the soil or something.
It doesn't matter. It's because he had all that other shit in his blood.
Probably.
Yeah.
He did it. There's a documentary that I've never been able to find. Maybe it's on YouTube. Maybe I'm looking it up the wrong way. But it's one of the coolest things. Lee Marvin, and it's a documentary done by John Borman.
Oh shit!
So John Borman,
the director of Lee Marvin. He's director of Zardoz and
Point Blank.
Point Blank. That's the word. That was the one I was going for. The payback of its time.
Yes, and he's doing this documentary, and he did it, after Lee Marvin had died, but he had all this archival footage, and there's footage in it of them on a boat, and they go out, marlin fishing, and Lee Marvin goes to tell him this story, and he says, you want to know what the secret to life is? I'll tell you what the secret to life is, and he goes on to tell this story about how he hooked this marlin. And it's like an 8-hour ordeal. They had to change the pole and get a new line in the thing and do the thing. And 4 guys had to help and move the chair. And it went on for days, one of those kind of stories. And then eventually, the pole, yanks back and they lose the fish. But when he reels the line in, he's got the marlin's eyeball. And he said that marlin had to make a decision. Am I going to be taken today? Or is this going to be it? Am I going to be taken and live without an eye? Am I going to live and go on and live without an eye, or am I going to be taken? And so he put up that fight with the hook in his eye. Like, he could have freed himself. He could have pulled away, but he's like, I'm going to give this a shot. And it was just the way Marvin told the story. It was such a great, this is what life is about. You know, how many legs does a three-legged dog have? You know, enough. That's the thing. And I just love that clip, and I hadn't been able to find it. But maybe it's on YouTube under something else. But last time I looked, I couldn't. You can find anything, obviously, but I could not find this documentary on Lee Marvin that Borman did. It was very cool. But, yeah, if you're listening still, we're talking about...
Gosh, we haven't started, have we?
Have we started?
No, we haven't. No.
We haven't started.
We have not started. So
I
will cut all this out because I don't think...
No, don't cut this out. Start at Gorky Park. Don't you want to start at Gorky Park?
Okay.
Just cut everything out before that. Yeah.
Okay.
That way it's nice and natural. But now we'll start the show. So now that'll be a nice little, blooper, little outtake for people to hear, like, how the sausage gets made. And then now you start the show officially.
All right.
Sort of
I'm leaving this all in.
But not the racist shit I said before we start.
Not the racist rant. No.
Okay.
Not that at all. We'll keep that between you and me. You monster.
Thank God.
So, welcome to Pod Stallions. I am Brian, and with me right next to me is Jason. And we're doing this a little different this time. We're taping it out of our homes, as opposed to the really elaborate Pod Stallions studios we both have.
Yeah, which are fully quarantined, by the way, but I didn't want to take the chance. Neither did Brian.
No. I can't go into the office. Yeah, no. I laid off all my staff. Doing it here in the basement, so I hope the sound quality is probably better. We have been isolated, like a lot of you. I am currently underemployed, and I guess you are doing the same. Are you still going to work, Jason, or is there...
Yeah, well, I did some Chrysler stuff the past few weeks. So just, a couple of days, 1 week, and a day the next, and it was just a few spots each time. I keep thinking they're going to do something like, a lot of the car companies are saying, we know what you're going through right now, and, to help out, you get a free car or whatever. But we haven't recorded that yet, but it could, it's up in the air. It could be anything. It could be nothing in April. I might go in and do one spot, but technically speaking, yeah, I'm unemployed, and I'm in my bunker, and I finished the feature script that I've told you about off air, and knocked that out, which feels really good, and got that to a couple people, which will never get made now because it's doomsday, but you never know. And then I'm working on the next one, which is kind of a horror movie, a little bit to do with Italian. It's Italian horror in a way that I don't think has ever been done before. So that's kind of fun. That's kept me a little busy. But aside from gearing up and heading to the store to get supplies here and there, and walking the dog and saying hi to the neighbors and stuff like that, for the most part, we've been filling up. Well, I don't have a family. It's just me. So I don't have a wife and two kids in the house. But I've been able to fill up more of my time probably by, marathoning shows and going down the rabbit hole of all the streaming stuff and, reading and stuff like that. So I've been watching a lot of stuff. And I think you've been watching a lot of late night stuff too.
Yeah, actually, I'm surprised at how little I've watched because... to quote the Butthole Surfers, I spend my time with the radio. I work a lot. I'm producing videos. I'm trying to figure out a publication for Plaid Stallions right now, and I've got ADHD, so I'm kind of all over the place. But I've been kind of spending my time through the catalog of music by artists like PJ Harvey and Tom Waits, and one of our Pod Stallions members put on John Davis. He suggested the Neil Hefti Odd Couple soundtrack to me.
Nice.
And I became obsessed with it. It's just
nice.
Great.
Did you see the thing? I posted something on Facebook maybe a week ago. It's almost 2 hours of clips of Tom Waits on Letterman. from like from 82 until Letterman went off the air, and it's just fantastic. It's just
Well, I noticed the wife and the daughter, they watch a lot of movies, and they're really getting along. They're having a lot of fun. The two of them are kind of crazy, so it's kind of this. Yeah, no, it's there's an energy there. This whole episode, I know it's just kind of all out there, but it's dedicated to what we're doing in quarantine, what we're watching, and hopefully we can spread some of this stuff to you guys and give you suggestions, and then we obviously want suggestions back because I don't know about you, but like it's scientifically proven that if you have a little display in a grocery store and you have 3 types of jam, you'll sell more jam that way than if you have 12 types of jam to test, because people get overwhelmed.
Right.
And I'm like you, probably like you, like on a Friday night, you have a couple of beers or whatever, and you go through the on-demand system, and you spend like 45 freaking minutes.
Oh my God.
Trying to figure out, because I've got Crave, I've got Netflix,
okay,
I've got Shout Factory, I've got Tubi, I've got Prime, and it's like you sit there and go like, I don't know what to do.
First of all, it's creepy and eerie and kind of lovely at the same time that everything you've just described, outside of the 2 beers, it might be like a couple glasses of scotch for me, but I will sit there and I will start to get frustrated with myself.
Yeah, you get like, make a freaking decision.
Make a decision. I will. The first thing I'll do is go through the Prime thing, and as Amazon does with everything else, it says, oh, you watched, Gorky Park. You might like these 1,700 political thrillers or, whatever the hell. And you start seeing things you haven't seen before. A lot of the stuff I've seen before. So you make this queue. You add stuff to your list. And then you go, okay, I'm just going to jump into the list tonight. I'm going to find a couple things I put aside the other day that I know I want to watch. And then suddenly it'll pop up and go, hey, this shit just got added. And you're like, motherfucker. And then you start going through all the new stuff that just got added that's from brand new to super obscure, early 70s stuff or whatever. Make another list, and then I look at the clock and it's like, well, shit, it's 12:30. I better start. And I will get frustrated with myself that I'm taking so long to decide what I'm in the mood for. It's very much a mood thing. I found that you're talking about music. I've been diving into a lot of music as well. That's sort of, some newer stuff, and believe it or not, the Adam Lambert record is fantastic. And he when I saw him with Queen, I was knocked out. I didn't really. I mean, I knew who he was and everything, and I'd seen and heard some of his stuff. But he was terrific in concert. And then I thought, I'm going to get this record, and it's just this great throwback. It's got a throwback kind of funk, 80s kind of vibe to it, and he sounds great. And the new, what's his name, Tame Impala and stuff like that. And so I've been doing all that, but a lot of older stuff that I dig and just putting it on shuffle.
Yeah, it just reminded me, the Ty Segall, who's an artist I enjoy, he released an album of Harry Nilsson covers.
He's the guy, he's like an acoustic guy, right?
No, he's not. Ty Segall and the Muggers, I think his name of his band. Yeah, and he released an album called Segall Schmeagol.
Oh, and nice.
What a wonderful distraction that was for the day.
Nice.
Nice.
But it is the kind of thing where I find that, like music with the watching stuff, it's like, I'm good at certain times of the day with certain things. Or like, that's a Saturday morning thing. I'll put that aside till Saturday afternoon or something. Or like I'm doing that shit too, because there's so much that's out there. Because this is now our video store. This is now our Blockbuster.
Well, yeah, and what's really sad is in quarantine that would be the first place that would close down anyways. So thank God for streaming, because there's no way you're going to touch videos that other people have had.
Exactly.
But I thank God for my physical media addiction. I have like thousands of Blu-rays and DVDs, and I have lots of stuff with commentary, and I've been going through some commentary, and the number one best commentary ever is Sam Sherman for me.
Mm.
Sam Sherman is the half of Independent International Films, and a lot of his drive-in movies are made much better by watching his movies with his commentary, because he has so many stories, and there's been a lot of them that I've been avoiding doing. I've been also putting on commentaries from movies I own. The last one I did was kind of hilarious, though. I put on Enter the Dragon, which is a movie that I've seen a million times, but I put it on with commentary. And the producer is the commentary guy, and at one point he just phones people from
that's cool.
like that have been involved with the movie.
Oh,
Because
wow.
you hear the phone ringing and you're going, what the hell's going on? And he's like, hey, I'm doing commentary for Enter the Dragon. It's like some guy who worked on the set design.
That's fantastic.
And it's sort of like this is so crazy, I can't believe I'm watching this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I will admit I went to dark places.
For subject matter, you mean?
Yeah, I watched Cats.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah.
You're really... You got to save that for, like, week 12 of quarantine.
Yeah, no, I did that, like, week 1.
There should be a lot of shit to get to before that
yeah, my
film.
beard hasn't even fully grown in. My daughter really wanted to watch it.
You're still peeing in mason jars, though, right? You're still
of course,
doing that.
And I'm saving my...
Because we kind of made an agreement. We kind of said,
yeah.
I'm not using the toilet. You're going to do the mason jar thing, right? And you said yes, so I hope you don't...
I don't even have indoor plumbing at this point. But yeah, no, I watched Cats. I got through... Well, a couple of things happened. I was hoping for a lot of schadenfreude. I was hoping that this would be so gloriously terrible that I would, go through it. But I really don't think I don't even think I'd watch a good version of Cats. You know what I mean? Like, somewhere along the lines, like, yeah, there's nothing in here I want to see. And
like, there's an Earth, or not even an Earth 2 that exists.
Yeah.
There's a version of Cats that's really good.
Yeah, there's no version of Cats I want to watch. And then
right.
The one version I was watching contained, like, terrible CGI Rebel Wilson and James Corden. Is his name James Corden?
Yeah,
and
it is.
Like, those people aren't high on my let's watch them list. So I tapped...
As humans, much less
as much less as like terrifying floating heads on cat bodies. And I tapped out probably 30 minutes in, and I got a note, like a text message in my office later on from my wife that said, yeah, we're done too. We only got about... Because I guess my daughter really wanted to see it for the songs, and they were butchering the songs. And it was like, okay, well, I understand where she's going with that. But yeah, it was that was an interesting experiment.
But after that, everything. The thing is, after that, everything is icing. I mean, after that, like, you can't go wrong. No matter how far down the rabbit hole you go with Amazon Prime, it ain't Cats. So
it ain't Cats. And
in a way
I've revisited a lot of great films. One of the ones I did was the Alec Baldwin The Shadow, which I thought...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's an interesting film. I want to know what your take is, but I remember seeing that in the theater. We were so starved for stuff like this, for anything. I mean, I was such a huge fan of The Rocketeer that when they started talking about The Shadow, and even then, and I say it today again, but even then I thought Liam Neeson should have been the guy. It shouldn't have been Alec Baldwin. It should have been Liam Neeson. He's already got most of the nose. It works. But at the time when it sort of got announced, it was like, oh, yeah, this is a period thing. I know about The Shadow. I used to have my dad would get me the radio shows on cassette.
Yeah, I used to listen to those too. Yeah,
Orson Welles stuff. So, and I remember thinking, I remember liking it. I mean, I had the Shadow ring that came out. I had all the merchandise and everything, and but I remember it being, again, not quite sure what it was going to be, because there's a lot of winking at the audience. But there's a lot of stuff that they kept that's right from the gospel of the Shadow, of the way it was written, and those pulps were written.
Well, you know what's funny is I watched it by myself in the office while I worked, and then I think on Saturday night I tried to watch 2 different movies. I tried to watch Schwarzenegger's Raw Deal because I've never seen it, and it was on Prime, and it was joyless. And then I tried to watch the last chapter of the Rambo films, and it was also kind of like, ugh, what am I watching here? So I put The Shadow on again to show my kid because, and my wife came down, and they were kind of laughing because they can't take Alec Baldwin seriously anymore. You know, like to them, Alec Baldwin is Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock.
He's a comedic. Yeah,
and he's doing that voice, and he's doing this, and both of them just said, "No, this isn't working for me." And you know, I get it, but I think the film had a great deal of wit. It's not perfect, but there's some, like, it's weird that in the early '90s, after the success of Batman, the film studios went after comic characters that nobody thought about. Like, you know, like after the success of Batman, if I was an enterprising film executive, I'd be like, what's going on over at Marvel? What's going on over at DC? I wouldn't be like, hey, Dick Tracy. Like, I never understood that mentality of the the studios. And as much as I thought The Shadow, and I am a huge fan of the Shadow, or the Phantom movie. I think that's excellent. And I think both. So
you would take the Phantom over the Shadow?
I like them both. I like them both equally, I think,
because they're very similar in the tone.
They have a tongue-in-cheek, but both of the things I really like about the Phantom and the Shadow, and these are things that were missing from epics such as Spawn, or you know, even some Batman movies, was the character wasn't so grim. You know, Lamont Cranston has a sense of humor in the film. The movie has a sense of humor. You know, the whole Brooks Brothers thing. The nemesis and him kind of, and I especially loved Billy Zane's performance as the Phantom.
He's great.
He's wonderful. He's eclectic. He's a human being, and I also like both of the female leads in the Phantom and the Shadow. They outclass every female lead in any of the Batman films.
So the lead of the Shadow was Penelope Ann Miller, who at the time was in every other movie that was getting made.
Yeah,
so she was huge at the time. And then in the Shadow, it was
Christy Swanson.
Christy Swanson. Yeah.
Yeah, they were both full of character and interesting. And in the Phantom, you also had Catherine Zeta-Jones, and those were what I would consider very strong female leads.
Yeah.
And also the Shadow has Peter Boyle.
Oh yeah.
And Peter Boyle's amazing. And
was it Shrevey? It was Shrevey the cabbie? Was he called Shrevey?
But when you watch the opening scene of the Shadow, you know, the Shadow goes, you know, he's explaining who he is, and he goes, the Shadow knows, ha ha ha. And then they show Peter Boyle driving, going, ha 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 ha. And it's funny, like it takes you your Peter Boyle in that scene. You know what I mean? Like, Peter Boyle has clearly been there with this guy, and
my issues with it though were and somewhat more so than the Shadow, but I mean more so than the Phantom. But my issues were always that there are moments in the Shadow that are really, really cool.
Yeah,
are like I don't know if you ever read any of the pulps, but I did all the Gibson stuff. But like, this guy was a maniac with how much he wrote and how dense these things were, and the character's fairly dark, and the whole, you know, that he was I forget the name of the character that he was when he crashed, and then he became Lamont Cranston. He took on the persona and all this stuff. Like, you're watching and going, boy, this is really sticking to it. This is great. And then there are moments that are really freaking, like the first time you see him, the shot on that bridge when that first fight happens, the first time you push in and see him revealed,
epic.
I think is fantastic.
It's
fantastic.
wonderful.
And there's a lot of moments like that throughout the film, or when he's he's living the life of Riley, in the Himalayas and eating fruit and stuff, and all these women and stuff. And then when he has that that encounter with the character that says, you know what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do to atone for your sins and who you are and all this stuff.
It does have a terrible origin.
Then he kind of makes a joke. Then he kind of jokes about things, and then it's kind of, and it never, I felt like it sort of fell into the trap that a lot of stuff does. And I'm not even going to say Flash Gordon, because Flash Gordon's a different animal altogether, I would say. That was just, the idea was that it was going to be fun and psychedelic and stuff. But these movies were post Batman, 89, Batman Returns,
which was full of tongue in cheek itself, though.
It was, but there's a way to.
I know what you're saying.
Like the Brooks Brothers thing. I love that scene. I love it.
It's funny.
But there's no way to. That's not the same thing as the Batwing going up in front of the moon and winking at the audience like, doesn't this look like the bat symbol? Isn't that neat? Kind of thing. It's more of a self-knowing kind of self-awareness that it has in the script, and it always kind of bugged me where it was like, be a little more confident in what this thing is, because there is but I think it's difficult to do with the period stuff too. It's like, I was talking to Alex the other night. We were on a 4.5 hour freaking phone call, and we were talking about
guys don't have a social life right now.
Well, A, we don't have a social life. B, he doesn't have he doesn't text.
Right.
So you can't say, oh, you got to stay. So when you get him, and when we get on the phone, we have a list of stuff we got to catch up on, and and then it becomes history lessons from both of us. Him about the history of comics, and me about the Small Faces or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Doc Savage, and what a tough thing that is to crack. And I think the last thing I read was that Neil Moritz or somebody, they were going to do a television version. Finally, there was a Doc Savage thing that was going to happen. And then we talked about the George Pal thing and how misjudged that was and stuff. But it's kind of this sort of, just being confident in the coolness or how interesting the property is, and just kind of going with it. And you would think that post 89, there would have been, like Warren Beatty with Dick Tracy. I think he had the rights before, Batman hit, and then he went, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And it's I like it for what it is, because it's completely different than Batman in the sense that it's got all these primary colors, and it somehow kind of works. But Beatty is, the character is this one note, cipher for everything else that sort of happens in the, everyone else being outlandish and stuff.
Yeah.
But they take it seriously. They took it
seriously. I don't hate Dick Tracy by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't rewatched it in years. But I think it was.
I'd like to rewatch that, and I think now's a good time.
You know what? I think you're right. I think we should probably live stream it together and do a commentary, and 7 or 8 people will really enjoy that.
We should. Hey, listen, that's not a terrible idea. Well, speaking of things we've been rewatching or watching, I currently have my listeners, the 12 of you that are out there still listening at this point, you're getting a peek behind the curtain.
Beloved.
A very rare peek behind the curtain of Jason's Amazon list. Exciting Amazon life. There's a bunch of stuff that I put in here, but one of them I wanted to ask you about last time, and I'm going to bet right now that you know what. Not only do you know what this is, but that you've seen it, and not only have you seen it, but you probably know someone somehow tangentially sort of related to this film. I had heard of this, and when I came across it on Prime, I went, there's no way this is the thing I think it is. The movie called Things. Canadian.
Oh, yeah, I don't know anyone involved in that film.
Low-budget movie.
But I have seen Things, yes. The director does live in Toronto. And,
I knew you would have seen this.
And he does give like talks,
lectures
at
lectures.
Local, lecture, what can I say about things that hasn't been said that other than I'm sorry? And Yeah, this is like to me it reminds me of somebody doing stop motion animation. Like they do little segments, like stop, but they're doing it with just real people. Like it's like filmed in
Yeah, and like
in
months
little
apart.
vignettes.
Yes. Well,
And
but
I
see,
think I think it's all ADR, right? Like the whole film is just dubbed
the whole
over.
film. And then, but the thing for me is, it's like you go, why this one? Like, do you remember that movie that came out? I don't know, a decade ago, 15 years ago. It was like was it called Home Movie? About the guy that was making the movie that he'd been working on. You know,
Yeah.
What was it called? What was that movie called? Was it Home Movie? It wasn't Home Movie. What was it called? The long-haired guy and his buddy were making the movie that did all the stunts.
Mark Borchardt. Yeah.
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 What
What was that called? I know the movie was called Coven.
Coven.
Yeah.
It was Coven.
American movie, I think it was called.
American movie, and it's great.
Oh, it's
wonderful.
It's such like, I
it.
always described that movie as an onion. It just kept there was so many layers to this.
It was like the low budget movie maker equivalent to the Anvil movie.
Yeah.
Where you put on the Anvil documentary and you don't know where this is going to go, but it just kept.
Now, if you ask about the Anvil movie, yes, I do know people in Anvil. I bought toys from people in Anvil. Yeah, one of my friends is actually the original bass player in Anvil. But I didn't know that when I knew him. That's the weirdest thing. We were talking at a toy show, and he goes, yeah, I've been to Japan when I was in Anvil. And I'm like, what? And then I went to another room at the toy show and flipped through some records and found him on the cover of I didn't know. I'd known him 20 years, and I didn't know he was an Anvil.
Well, that's another amazing documentary if nobody has seen it.
That's brilliant.
But again, the American movie one, to me, my takeaway from that was, okay, why this? This is going on in every small town in America, multiple times a day. There are people trying to make their own movies or do their own shit, whatever. How did this become the thing that became whatever? And so watching Things, all I kept thinking about was, how on earth did this become anything ever? Because it's not even like Ed Wood, bad, it's good. It's truly like someone left the old school VHS camera on. Everybody came home from the bar and just sat around talking, and then the next day looked at it and said, "Oh, look, we talked for 4 hours and nothing happened."
Well, I think it had more to do with the distribution network at the time. We were. And this is something that I've become kind of fascinated with, having all these streaming services. I've started to kind of watch made-for-video garbage. And, there was a lot of that stuff. And I was watching...
You're talking about the sort of the...
the mid-'80s to the 2000s.
The Wings Hauser type stuff.
Well, when they couldn't afford Wings Hauser. Yeah. Okay. I was watching a movie the other day called Hollow Man. I think it was called Hollow Man. It stars Joe Lara, who played Tarzan in the Tarzan series. I actually really like. But yeah, you just look at this stuff and go it's not okay for theaters. It's made to get to the blockbuster. Remember every Friday we'd go and look at the new releases.
Right.
And I think Things kind of slipped in there. And believe it or not, those Things guys have directed 2 films.
Well, okay. Now, see, but that's the thing. I agree with the distribution and how stuff gets out there. The directed video, because I worked in a video store in the early 90s. Huge video store in St. Paul, right, very close to Minneapolis. And it was one of the biggest in the Twin Cities. It had everything, and that's where I got a lot of my movie education, because I had somebody hooked me up with a lifetime membership. It was $1 a rental, so I'd rent 2 or 3 movies a night at times. But it was right in that.
I saw so much garbage that period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was right at that big, very mid to late '80s and early '90s direct to VHS stuff, or the stuff that couldn't get into the theater that was meant to, that went right to video and whatever. This is not remotely.
There are 4 Things movies.
This is not remote. They made 4 of these?
Yes.
See,
That's just
that's
digging
not
it up.
right.
No,
That's not.
nothing's
That's
right
just
about that. And yeah, things
that's,
is like you want your 90 minutes back.
yeah. I do. And
I
so I don't.
completely agree. And,
Yeah.
and to those of you out there that have not seen things,
Don't.
at the start of Strange Brew, Bob and Doug McKenzie are premiering their film. You remember that? It's
Oh,
basically the
absolutely.
Omega Man. They redid the Omega Man. That's better than things.
That is the Citizen Kane
Yeah.
of homemade movies compared to things. There's some other stuff on here that I wanted to tell you about that I
Hmm.
put on here that I'm sure you know of, you've probably seen, but it's the kind of thing where I go, how the hell did that get on Prime? Um, uh,
Prime is my favorite
it's
video
am-
source because it
it's
is like
amazing.
it's like a 90s video store. And my
Yeah.
wife's like, there's nothing good on here, and I'm like, this is awesome.
So
Like,
you go, so you see, I see like Capricorn 1, and I go, oh, you
yeah,
know,
when
I
the
saw
hell have you last seen
I saw
Capricorn
that
1?
in the theater with my cousin David, and you know
Yeah.
what? I bet I haven't seen it since. I'm going to put it on. I bet it's better than I remember. I'm
Nope.
going to try that again. Well, at the same time, I found Candy. When's the last time you saw Candy? The 1968 film it's got Coburn in it and Ringo Starr and Marlon
I've
Brando.
never seen that.
You've never seen Candy. This is right up your alley. It's Terry Southern, I think, wrote the screenplay. And it's about this innocent, quote, high schooler, but she's obviously like in her early 20s, that sort of just has these different vignettes and escapades. But it's got Richard Burton, Charles Aznavour, Marlon Brando, Ringo Starr, James Coburn. It's
Shit.
it's insane. It's the kind of thing where at the time people were going. That's when people started to think Marlon Brando has lost the plot completely, because this is the kind of stuff that he's doing. But if anybody knows what I'm talking about, it's got a killer soundtrack.
I may not get Candy in Canada. Let's see, because there are some certain like rights restrictions. Yeah, I don't get it.
Okay.
That's why I haven't. But
Okay. That's probably why you haven't come
can I
across.
derail the entire episode and tell you a
Sure.
story that I read?
Sure. Look, this one we're in quarantine. There's nothing I can do about
Yeah,
it.
no,
So
no, no.
feel
It's a
free.
long ramble. In between watching television and making videos and other stuff, I've been reading a lot. And I have a stack of one of my favorite magazines on the entire planet is Shock Cinema. And I would really encourage anyone who listens to this podcast to consider subscribing to this magazine. I do not want this magazine to go away. And they had an interview because like Psychotronic magazine's gone, Shock Cinema remains, and it's very similar
Yeah.
to that. They had an interview with Robert Carradine, and Robert Carradine, of course, is the brother of David Carradine, and he's most famous probably for Revenge of the Nerds. You know, he was the main nerd.
Mm-hmm.
But he told a story in one of the magazines about during the filming of Kung Fu, when you're the star of the television show, Warner Brothers basically says you can have a theater to yourself and pick anything out of our archive and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before VCRs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
David picked a film, I think it was The Wild Bunch,
Okay.
and he's watching it with Anthony Zerbe
Wow.
and his brother Robert. And Anthony Zerbe at some point goes, "I know where Marlon Brando lives," and they all just get in a car and go to his house.
Oh wow.
And they're knocking on the door, and I think Brando's in The Wild Bunch, right? Like I hope I'm not misquoting myself. Because...
Brando is not in the Wild Bunch.
Oh, okay. Then what Peckinpah film is Brando in?
I don't think Brando's in a Peckinpah film. He did a couple of westerns though. He did a western with we did One-Eyed Jacks. He did a western.
Okay, they were watching One-Eyed. I think they were watching One-Eyed Jacks. I apologize. It's been about 2 weeks since I read this. Anyways, they show up at his house and say, "We loved you in this." But they didn't get him. They got a guy who said, "What do you want?" And they just went, "Well, we're just all fans of his, performance in One-Eyed Jacks, and we wanted to tell him." And the door closes, and then the door opens. It goes, "Marlon, we'll see you now." And it's just madness. Like
Wow.
you have Kwai Chang Caine, Matthias from the Omega Man, and Louis Skolnick from Revenge of the Nerds at
Wow.
Marlon Brando's.
And just a peat moss bag filled with cocaine.
Yeah,
Well,
well, what was funny about that was Robert Carradine said in the interview, like, did that, he said Brando was awesome. He was really nice. He loved hearing compliments, and they all left at the end of it. And then he said, did you, the interviewer said, did you ever run into Brando again? And he said, yeah, once. I was riding my motorcycle to a grocery store like at 3 a.m, and my headlights turned, and Brando was sitting in a car eating ice cream out of it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And so many
this
levels.
is what I've been doing with my free time.
On so many levels, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But
Wow.
speaking
Do
of...
you remember when Chris Elliott would come on Letterman and do Brando? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I've been watching...
I found a bunch of those
there was like a
clips.
super cut of
Yes,
Chris Elliott on...
Wait,
Letterman.
this is weird. We might be like, are you menstruating right now? Because I am. We might be
Yeah,
on the
totally.
same
Yeah, no, I'm
Are we
sure
on the
I
same
am.
cycle? Because you're watching the same shit I'm watching in
Yeah,
Toronto.
so we may be cut of the same jib.
I've been watching the same Chris Elliott stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know if you know this, but I was like addicted to Chris Elliott back in the early... Like Get a Life was the greatest television show I've ever seen.
There are supercuts of different characters. I started with the what's his name? Oh shit, Al, the guy, sports guy who got in trouble for being with hookers that bit him. Stuff. Al, what was it?
Oh my God! Now I if you'd asked me a minute ago,
God.
but we're on air.
He wore that wig.
Marv Alpert.
Marv Alpert. And Chris Elliott would do this thing where he'd come out and like brush his slacks off, because Albert always did that. And he always had like a stack of stuff in his pocket. And they start riffing on it, and Letterman just goes with it. And there's this super cut that's out there on YouTube that I was just dying. I was absolutely dying laughing at this stuff. So clearly we're watching some of the same stuff. This is another one that I put in my queue that I haven't. Well, first of all, you said something earlier. It was kind of interesting about watching something. You watched Cats, or you said, I want to dip into this and just see what
Schadenfreude.
And then you do the Shadow or whatever. Well, I don't know where I was that I found this 3-pack of movies of Dwayne Johnson of The Rock.
Oh no!
Now here's the thing.
Are you okay?
I like Dwayne Johnson.
Everyone likes Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson but he's the kind of guy that you just go, if just once he could be given the right vehicle, the right thing to do, and he could actually put some effort into it, you're like, that guy is great, But
he looks like he hugs and he smells nice.
He has made 175 movies in the past 6 years, I think.
And they're all garbage.
Awful. Absolutely awful. But there was one in the 3-pack.
And I forgive him.
And this 3-pack was like $5 or something. So, I'm going to be in quarantine. I'm going to get this thing. I don't know if I'd seen the second G.I. Joe movie, but he's in it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It has Hercules, the Hercules movie he did, and I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to say this: not a bad movie. It is not a.
I've never seen it, so
it is the kind of thing you would stay away from, miles away from. But I started watching, and I'm like, this is going to be absolute garbage. This is going to be like the Scorpion King thing that he did, or whatever.
Well, I think what I'm looking at is a case of your expectations. You were so low, you limboed into it.
I was so low. But at the same time, you're watching it going, I know what every one of these characters is. I know where they've come from. I know where they're going by the end of this thing. And it was perfectly fine for what it was. It was the kind of thing that's like...
that's the quote on the top of the box.
No, but it's not like freaking Megaforce or something. It's not like that. It actually and you're watching it, you're going, he's actually trying.
Okay, no, I'm not going to put this down because I haven't seen it.
I'm saying talk to me in 15 weeks when you've got nothing to watch and you stick on the Hercules Rock. But the other movie that's in this 3-pack is a movie called Pain and Gain, with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg and the Falcon, and Tony Shalhoub is
And the Falcon.
and
You
and
mean Anthony Mack or
Anthony Mackie,
Yeah.
the Falcon, is in it. I call him the Falcon. When I see him, when we get together, away. Hey Falcon, how you doing? You good with the quarantine? And he's like, yeah.
He call you Snowman?
Do you need hand sanitizer? I'm like, no, I'm good. I got plenty at home. No, he doesn't call me anything. Every time he looks at me like, I don't think I know who you are. But it is. I remember seeing it or like renting it when it came out, after it came out, and it was like, oh, that's bonkers, because it's based on a story out of, I think it was in, I don't know if it was in GQ or some magazine or paper or something, about these these muscleheads, these idiot muscleheads. They kidnap a multi-millionaire, and they want to take everything he owns, and they keep him hostage for a while. But then, of course, it goes horribly wrong. It's very dark. It's very violent. The script is by what's his name and what's his face, McFeely and Marcus, who did The Winter Soldier, and they did Endgame, and they did the other one before Endgame, the Avengers, Infinity War, and all this stuff. And it's watching it a second time. It's great. Like I said, it's very dark, very violent, and completely politically incorrect with the violence and everything else. And who these idiot, they could not be three stupider men. And then when I read up on it after the fact, you read up on the story and you're like, my God, this all really happened. But the high point, Tony Shalhoub in this movie as the guy that gets kidnapped. I was by my, as we all are, by myself watching this thing at 2 a.m, and I had tears coming down my face at how funny Tony Shalhoub is in this movie. It's one of the hardest I've laughed in a long time. So I would recommend it just for that. Not a family movie, not something to share with the wrong people, but it's bonkers. It's completely bonkers, and it's based on this true story. So there was a couple, out of 2 out of 3, I was like, I didn't expect these things to be that good, and I wanted to give them a try. Now, here's one that I just found that I have not watched yet, but every now and then, like, I'm not an encyclopedia of movies or this stuff. Of course, I always come across stuff that I'd never heard of, or I'd kind of heard of but never was aware it existed, or whatever. Very rarely does something come up of a certain period that I am completely oblivious to. And I looked at this, and then I looked at the trailer, and I was like, why have I never seen this? And I'm guessing you have. 1983, it's called The Final Terror.
Oh, yeah, I can't quite remember what it is, but
so it's 4 couples go on like a rafting trip into the woods, and then some shit goes down. I don't know what it's about yet. I haven't watched it yet. The trailer looks pretty good, but it's got Joe Pantoliano in it.
Joey Pants.
Rachel Ward.
Oh,
Adrian Zmed. Adrian Zmed is in it. He's one of the leads. I think it's pre-Hooker. Maybe it was during Hooker. I forget. Maybe it was like during.
83 would have been during Hooker.
Yeah, during Hooker.
Yeah, but it's got an awesome poster. I remember that.
It's an amazing poster. Oh, it's great. And it was directed by Andrew Davis, who did The Fugitive and some other stuff. But I looked at the trailer. I'm like, why have I never heard of this thing? I don't know what this is, but I am definitely gonna.
One of my mom's best friends, Angela, who has since passed, she always called The Fugitive the Fugitive, and she would always correct me if I said, "Oh no, it's The Fugitive." She would go, "The Fugitive," and I just really wanted to pay tribute to Angela.
It might have done better had it been called The Fugitive.
I always loved that joke.
The guy, one of the guys in it is Perfect Tommy from Buckaroo Banzai, which is a favorite movie of mine.
Yeah.
And you don't see him in a lot of stuff, but he's in this movie too. And it's like every face that popped up in this trailer, I was like, how come I've never... Like, this would have been a rental at some point, a VHS rental.
You know what? I occasionally do stumble upon those on YouTube, and you just sit there and go like, how did this bullet miss me? I was home alone.
Exactly. So
I've noticed that an awful lot. During this time, because you start to. First of all, there's a wonderful thread, and I encourage everyone who is quarantined and isolated to look through this. Full movies on YouTube on Reddit.
Oh yeah.
Some weird ass shit gets in there, and you don't know. It for me, I think it's actually one of my favorite things in the world, because it's like rolling the dice, and it's like, oh, I'll try this, and I end up watching more weird movies than I ever expected to. And there's some there's been a lot of 80s movies I've completely forgotten that I've watched over the years through that. But one of the things that's happened for me was I've discovered a couple of documentaries, and the one that I think my daughter had set my daughter and I have a rivalry going back and forth where I set her Netflix to Cantonese and she sends my to Arabic, and we go back and forth, and she's 14, so she's way smarter than I am. But about a week ago, I realized, oh shit, I have my Netflix set to children, and because I couldn't, like, my friend, I was watching Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol's on one of our services here. And
I freaking love Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol is my favorite comic book series ever.
And did you not to sidetrack you here, but just to get back to it in a second, but did you ever see the Swamp Thing series that they did? I gotta tell you, I was getting to that in a minute, but like, just throw it out there. It is. The only reason that they didn't get another season was to do with
production
tax
costs.
Stuff. Yeah. It's not Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol is it's hard to get something because it's so freaking good. But Swamp Thing is great, and the way they treat the character and the way the design and it's very graphic and very dark. I liked it, and I especially because I thought, well, if this keeps going, I can't wait to see where it goes. But Swamp Thing's great. But Doom Patrol, I actually have that on my coffee table, ready to roll out again to watch that series again for the second.
I've never seen a show that I've enjoyed as much as Doom Patrol. I'm very burned out on superheroes. I don't want to see any more Marvel movies. I'm, on DC movies. But Doom Patrol was like, oh god, I can't wait to watch the next one. And I did.
But see, that's why I think you'll like Pennyworth. That's why I keep recommending Pennyworth.
I know. I remember you mentioning that, and I imagine I'll have time to at least sample an episode.
Something tells me you're going to get to it at some point.
But Doom Patrol, I started treating like brownies in a tin, where it's like, oh, I'll just have one, and doing that thing with my fingers, to the point where when I finally got laid off at work, and I was kind of welcoming that at that point. I finally finished, the last Doom Patrol I had, and it was very satisfying, very wonderful, wonderful television show. And now I haven't, where I was going with this is, I didn't hate Titans the first season. I didn't love it, and I should have hated it, but I thought it was actually kind of okay.
Me too. I didn't hate it. I should have, but again, I'm not in love with the DC stuff like a lot of people are, so I can imagine how people feel about it, but people seem to dig it because they got another season, and I'm actually 4 episodes into the second season.
Yeah, the other part of Titans is that it's mostly filmed at where I live and where I hang out, and so much so that there's a restaurant my wife and I and my family go to about 30 minutes away from my house because we go to antiquing and that sort of thing. And one day I went there and they had a new sign up that said like Egg Place, Schenectady, New York. And I remember going like, what the hell is this? And then I realized that I think they were filming Titans here. Or if it's not Titans, it's the, the Boys on Prime. Or, because Toronto is like superhero city right now. And so I kind of want to see my favorite breakfast nook on a program, I want to see, because we're watching the Boys about a year ago. They had a murder in they had this fight scene in a donut shop, and I was more fascinated by the fact that I lived across the street from that donut shop back in the 90s. I was like, I know where that is, and I kind of get fascinated with that. But yeah, no, the Titans wasn't abhorrent to me. I somehow enjoyed it. So
For me, it's a lot. It's a lot to do with. I just kind of go, the part of my thing with, again, this is a side track here, but like to
what the hell?
talk about a lot. Well, a lot of this stuff and a lot of this new stuff, like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this without offending people or to whatever. But there is a ton of stuff that's out there, and we're very fortunate that there's so much stuff. But depending on the network, or the streaming service or whatever, there might be 2 shows that really knock you out. Like, I think it's unforgivable, frankly, that Disney launches the Disney Plus thing only with The Mandalorian. I find that really unforgivable. Like, they are Disney, for God's sake. They are never going to run on money. They should have launched with 5 new shows. They could have staggered them a bit, but there's nothing. Everything on there is like, it's everybody's seen everything basically.
It's a really bizarre thing, and to be honest with you, I would have canceled Disney Plus ages ago because like it's just the nonstop Simpsons channel. Like they don't even have all the Kurt Russell, Dexter Jones movies.
No, they don't.
But my son is obsessed with Clone Wars, and believe it or not, his girlfriend is too.
Okay, now, but now you're going. See, and again, that's the kind of thing where I go. I love the show Rebels. I loved it. I tried Clone Wars, didn't really dig it, but I'm gonna dig into it now because they're all up there in the new season, whatever. But that shouldn't be enough of a. What
I'm trying to say is that now, like, up until the quarantine, every Friday night, date night was I picked my son up from work. He would go to the Little Caesars by my house. He would pick up a terrible pizza, and then his girlfriend and him would watch the new Clone Wars together. And so it was sweet, and it's like, I don't care.
Cute.
Like, I'll keep paying for this service until Clone Wars goes off the air. It's done, fella. My wife and daughter have been watching all the terrible, or no, I shouldn't say terrible, but they've been watching all the Disney musicals. But for me, it's like, I watched The Black Hole once. I watched The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. The Mandalorian was fine. I enjoyed that program. Now I could cut the cord. Like, I could have cut the cord months ago.
And there's a ton of stuff on there, but like, I'm not going to watch.
It's a ton of shit I don't want to watch, though.
A ton of shit I don't want to watch. I'm not going to watch the made for Disney, kids movies and stuff, or the
nobody's
Disney
under 10 in here.
But
my daughter watches a lot of this stuff for like shameful joy. But
speaking of Kurt Russell, here's a movie that I put in the other night that I have not seen in forever, and I was dying. I was laughing so hard. Used Cars. If no one has seen the Kurt Russell movie,
I've never given that a college try.
God.
I think that's comedian Jim Norton's favorite movie.
It is such a good movie. It is so dark. It's such
tasteless,
a dark
isn't it?
It's complete. It's not tasteless like. It's not even really Animal House tasteless, but it's pretty tasteless. But one of the things
Jack
I love
Warden's
the
in
most,
that, isn't he?
But one of the things I love the most about it is the second lead is Garrett Graham. It's next to Phantom of the Paradise. It's the thing I know, and the De Palma stuff he did in the late '60s. When I think of Garrett Graham, I think of him in Used Cars, and he's freaking hysterical in the movie, in the part. He's just great. But it's Kurt Russell, Garrett Graham, David L. Landers, and Michael McKean's in it, and
those are all good journeymen.
Jack Warden plays 2 characters. Joe Flaherty's in it.
Joe Flaherty's in it?
Joe Flaherty's in it,
Joe
yes.
Flaherty is an unspoken hero of SCTV. Now I have to check it out.
And it's written by Bob Gale and Zemeckis, who ended up, wrote 1941. And it's one of these movies that, like, when they were making 1941, I think the idea came from Spielberg maybe, or John Milius, or someone of that ilk that said, I kind of want to make a movie about a used car dealer that's a real, swindler kind of thing. And there's 2 used car lots across the street or something. And somehow Zemeckis and Gale like, let's write this thing, and it didn't do much when it came out, and it's one of these things that took on a life of its own as the years went on, as this cult kind of thing. But it was, I think, one of the first things that Kurt Russell did to get out of the Disney kind of vein of the '70s. I think he played that sniper in a movie, the clock tower sniper guy, or the watchtower sniper guy, and then and then used cars. But I haven't seen it. I bet I haven't seen it in 20 years, and it's very funny. It's very
Where did you find that?
I actually found it on, it was like HBO or Stars or something. I saw it listed. I'm like, oh shit, I'm taping that. I'm recording that. And it was it was very funny. Russell's great in it. He's kind of the Andy Travis of the movie, and he's funny. But it's it's kind of tasteless, but it's not disgusting or like completely, sexist or whatever. It's kind of its time. But Garrett Graham, man, he's just one of those. Talk about an unsung hero of stuff. Why that guy never became huge, I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching something recently, and I can't, because I wasn't expecting to talk about Garrett Graham. I can't remember what it was, but he was just in it, and it was like, oh, why isn't this guy why isn't this guy super famous?
He plays this, he's Kurt Russell's kind of right-hand man at the used car place. And then they start, I'm not going to ruin it at all, but they start making these commercials. And then, of course, he does different characters in each commercial. And he's just hilarious.
Yeah, he was so versatile and so great.
He plays it real. So that was one. But there was another one that I had put aside that I was going to ask you about, or tell you that I put aside because I thought of you. And now I'm trying to find it right now.
Let me go through a couple of that I went through.
Okay, all right.
And I put these on the Pod Stallions Facebook page. The first thing I discovered, I think it was last week, was Jonathan Ross did a 1-hour Tarzan documentary called In Search of Tarzan. And you and I both love Jonathan Ross, and it is available on YouTube, and he does interview former Tarzans and talk about Tarzan on screen, and you know that I love Tarzan movies. So that was an exciting find for me, and I kind of piecemealed that.
It's in that kind of, it's sort of, he did the one Searching for Steve Ditko, and another one.
It reminds me of an Incredibly Strange Film Show. I love Jonathan Ross. He can do no wrong. He collects Micronauts and Mego figures.
I told you I met him at Comic-Con one year, like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that? Like 4 years ago? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was at a table looking at comic books, and we started talking, and I started talking about the Ditko show. Got a picture with him. I got to find it somewhere. But he goes, look what I picked up, and he like opened his bag and showed me all the stuff that he already picked up, like some vintage Migos and things like that he had in his bag.
To kind of just grow up and be him. It hasn't happened, but
time.
Yeah,
not a lot, but
there's still a lot of time left to grow up and be him. The other thing I discovered, pardon me, is a documentary. When I unlocked my Netflix, there was all this adult content. And this wonderful film called Iron Fist and Kung Fu Kicks came up, which is I have a huge obsession with Kung Fu movies. And it's true. And always have throughout my life. And this documentary, for my money, it was one of the better ones. It taught me something I never knew about the influence of Kung Fu movies, which was that it inspired the breakdancing culture.
Oh.
And it was like, okay, when a documentary, like, on something you absolutely love, that you just can't, when a documentary actually teaches you something.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
That's like, oh my God, I never thought of that. That deserves a gold star when you're otaku, and it also brought towards a bunch of films that I wanted to watch. And another film that did that for me was David's film, In Search of Darkness. There was a lot of 80s horror that I hadn't seen, and I really enjoyed it. And it actually led me to watching about a half a dozen Kung Fu movies while I painted. When I paint, for those that don't know, I also do portrait art. I just, you want to have something running in the background while you're painting. And I put on Five Fingers of Death and a slew of other movies. But Five Fingers of Death has contributed to being one of the most influential Kung Fu movies of the early 1970s because it was one of the first out the door. Like, it was a pre-Bruce Lee thing. And it was very interesting. It was... I would highly recommend it. It is available on YouTube, but it's not through the name Five Fingers of Death. It's through its original name.
Did I ever tell you that I on where I grew up in St. Paul when I was a kid, CBS, the affiliate, on Friday nights would do kung fu theater. They would run a kung fu.
Oh, really?
movie.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes
it was for Buffalo 29. It all went to TV around the early 1980s, which I discovered.
I was completely. I couldn't tell you the names of any of them or much in the way of details.
Oh no, and most of them are terrible.
But I was completely addicted every Friday night. I was 10, 11, or whatever it is, whatever it was. But I used to love those. I love the sound effects.
Oh,
in
yeah.
them. I love speaking because a lot of them were old parables. They were like old parables that they would sort of come to life in these tales and stuff. And so I love that aspect of them too.
Well, one of the most interesting things about Five Fingers of Death was Kill Bill, obviously.
Five Finger Death Move or whatever.
But it wasn't that though. That Beatrice Kiddo, they would play the Ironside theme.
Yes.
When she saw somebody that had wronged her.
Yeah.
That's from Five Fingers of Death.
Yeah.
Because all of those movies would steal American soundtracks and records liberally. And one of the kung fu movies that I really love is Master of the Flying Guillotine. And the music is actually taken from a German prog rock band called New.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you can watch a kung fu movie and they have the Star Wars music going on. Or, dun 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 dun, dun. Or just TV themes. I think in the documentary they talk about the fact that the theme from Shaft appeared in 5 different movies in 1 year.
Wow.
They would just lift these themes. And I just find that I'm a bit of a details guy, and I think that's pretty funny.
Did you? I don't know if we ever talked about this, but it's sort of related. Did you ever see the Amazon show? It was a podcast, but it was a show with Julia Roberts.
No.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I know what you're thinking because I was thinking the same thing. But then I watched it. It's done by the guy who did Mr. Robot, the guy who created, wrote, and did the show Mr. Robot. And so when I read about him doing this, I'm like, I'll give this a try. And each episode was a different length. I can't think of the name. Homecoming. I think it's called Homecoming. And apparently it was a podcast, which I didn't know about. But after maybe 1.5 episodes, I'm going, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to stick with this. This is really freaking interesting. And I don't want to give anything away about it, but it's got the vibe of a mid-'70s kind of conspiracy thriller sort of thing. Julia Roberts is in it, and I'm not a Julia Roberts person, but she's perfectly fine in it. But it's a great cast, and what's his name is in it too? This guy that I can't think of, a character guy. It's in a ton of stuff, but it's very good. But I get to about episode 4 or 5, and I hear this music cue, and I'm going, that's All the President's Men.
Yeah,
that's definitely
that kind of stuff.
All the President's Men. And so I look it up, and Sam Esmail, who created the show. The entire soundtrack of the show is all music pulled from movies, late 60s to early 70s, conspiracy thriller type movies that existed before. And the network had a massive headache getting it all sort of cleared in time to,
It sounds like the WKRP needle drops.
Yes, exactly. But
Yeah.
but this he's like, this is what I want to do, and they're like, yeah, no problem. And then it became, how do we do this with the unions and who was playing the instruments at the time and whatever. But it was that once I knew that and then watched the rest of it, it added a layer of wow, this guy really put in the time here, because all this music is from existing soundtracks, and he wanted to give it that vibe. And I don't think I'd ever heard of that before, in a licensed way. I'd never heard of it. We see it on trailers and shit, all the time. Speaking of other things, you know what else is on Amazon Prime? Hawk the Slayer from 1980.
Oh my God, I have the riff tracks of that.
Hawk the Slayer is on. That I've gone through half of, which I don't think I ever saw. Also, a great movie that some people might know of, but it's one of these weird kind of movies that sort of had a really strange history, and I think it should have come out a year before it did, and then when it did, it got cut up and stuff. It's called The Stuntman.
Oh, yeah, that's an underrated classic film. Yeah.
Peter O'Toole and Steve Railsback and Barbara Hershey. It's like 1980. Trippy as hell. Very strange, breaks the third and fourth walls sometimes and things like that. Speaking of documentaries, a great documentary that I haven't seen in probably 20 years called My Best Fiend, which is a Werner Herzog documentary about Klaus Kinski.
Okay, we are weird. We are weird.
No, you didn't watch that, did you?
I did. And I ate a piece of chocolate in front of him.
Klaus Kinski wasn't one of these like, oh, he's an eccentric actor.
No, he's
Klaus
an
Kinski
asshole.
was out of his mind.
And by the way, I also watched Turkey Shoot with Steve Railsback
Turkey
this
Shoot
weekend.
it is in my queue. Turkey Shoot is in my
it's amazing.
Along with the what's the other Australian one with Stacey Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis where
the trucker, Deadly Games.
One?
Yeah,
Deadly Games.
Yeah,
I got Deadly Games in here. I've got a Michael Caine, because of course you have to. The Eagle Has Landed, which I haven't seen in probably 25 years, World War II movie, which I think has, I think Michael Caine's a Nazi in it, and Robert Duvall is a Nazi. I'd never seen, but I finally watched Godzilla versus Destroyer.
Oh yeah.
Which is, I get really tired of the way they treat him. I don't like how they treat Godzilla in these movies. He's just,
you know what?
they're total
I
dicks.
have that. Actually, the movie was called Road Games, not Deadly Games.
Road Game. That's
but,
the one.
The thing that drives me crazy about Godzilla is I bought that beautiful Blu-ray set of Godzilla movies. I miss the dubbed versions of them.
I do too.
Because I do not want to pay attention to subtitles.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I've been doing a deep dive of, because I had bought these DVDs a while back and got them from Best Buy had steel books of a couple of them, and one of them I ordered way back from Amazon, are the Ultraman series, but starting with Ultra Q in '66, and then Ultraman, and then Ultra 7, and I've been watching them mostly in order, and they're fantastic. They're so much fun, and the budgets on these shows was incredible. The design work is unreal. Yeah. The effects and design, and of course when you get to the kaiju, with the fights and stuff, they're completely freaking mental. Like there was one where Ultraman shows up, and it's in the Himalaya or somewhere like these mountaintops, and there's this Yeti type, none of these look like anything but men in rubber suits, which is great. And there's this Yeti character and this other metal kind of creature that came down from space with wings, and Ultraman and the Yeti are teaming up on this guy. And no, there's a third one. I'm sorry, Ultraman hasn't shown up yet. This third Godzilla type, they're beating up the creature with wings. They rip its wings off. And some of these, like when the heads come off, blood squirts out. Like the heads come off these monsters and there's blood and stuff. And then so they do that. And then this Ultraman ship drops a bomb on the Yeti guy. He freezes and then disintegrates, explodes. And then Ultraman zaps the other creature up into the air and shoots these rings out of his hands, which slice it into 3 pieces in midair. And these were kids' shows. Most
Ultraman episodes. And then I'm not gonna I love Ultraman, but they end with why didn't he just start with that move?
Well, he's got to conserve his energy. He gets his energy from the sun, and you don't want to
He's at the bottom length, and then he just comes out with butcher blades out of his arms, and you're why didn't you start with? Why didn't you open with that? You get it done.
You don't want to open with that. You're looking for logic in an Ultraman show.
I'm half German, so it's really efficiency.
I've been watching all of those, and those have been
you and I echo that, but I've been watching Kamen Rider.
And now I've because that thing picked up the Kamen Rider, and there's Ultraman Leo or Lion or Leo, whatever.
Yeah, on Shout Factory or Tubi TV.
You gotta freaking, like you said, you can't be doing other stuff. You've got to pay attention. Even if you miss 2 or 3 subtitles,
here's
you look at
I've started a daily ritual of riding a stationary bike watching one episode of Kamen Rider. Because they're 25 minutes long. and it's the only exercise I get in a day, other than walking my terrible old blind dog. So, I've been watching them with great focus, and I'm telling you, Jason, you don't need to.
Well, that's the thing. You don't,
Yeah.
like I say, if you miss an exchange that's like 2 or 3 back and forth.
Well, they're also bad shit.
They're crazy, but like some of the stuff, some of the, especially in Ultra Q, the black and white one, which clearly wanted to be
that
like,
might be a bit more intense, because that was like the X-Files of its day.
Yeah, that wanted to be more like a Twilight Zone Outer Limits, and some of the concepts are so far out.
Yeah.
Eventually you get to the end, and it's a rubber monster comes up out of the ocean or something. Oh,
sure, yeah.
But
that's
still,
what we want, and that's what we deserve.
They're gorgeous to look at. They're great. I also plowed through Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, which is the series after the Young Ones that Adrian Edmondson and Rick Mail.
Oh yeah, I really want to get into the one they did right after that. Oh goodness, what is it called?
So Bottom, the one called Bottom.
Bottom, yeah. I've clicked into that a few times, but I've never given it a real full look. I also really, really want to get into the Mighty Boosh again.
Oh yeah, that's streaming. You can definitely watch that on streaming.
I'm in Canada. I don't know.
Oh, you don't get that? Okay.
Yeah, where are you getting that streaming?
I think Amazon Prime has it. I have it in a queue, even though I've got all the DVDs and shit. But I think I have it in a queue. I'm going to say this again. I talked about it at length on Facebook. I've mentioned it several times on here, but I'm going to say it again because I can't get enough of it. There is a show called Inside Number 9 that if you are a fan of Alfred Hitchcock Presents or Twilight Zone or horror, Hammer, suspense, anthology type shows, for my money, this show is the best anthology series since the original Twilight Zone. It's only 6 episodes a season. They've done 5 seasons now, or 5 series, as they say in the UK. But each one is completely different, with completely different characters. The 2 guys, Reese Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, who created it and write every episode. They write every one. They're in every one. They are starting from scratch every time they do a new one. So one of them might be told backwards in 5-minute increments. So 10 minutes earlier, this happened, and then the screen goes black. It's 10 minutes earlier, and by the time you get to the end, it's the beginning. Or they did one in iambic pentameter. They did one that is silent, like a silent movie. So they're kind of pushing the boat out completely different each time, and it's also very funny. But it can go from melancholy to tragic to jaw-dropping, I can't believe what I just saw, to Monty Python-esque kind of dark humor and bodily function and stuff. There is nothing like it, and I think on Amazon Prime, season 1 through 3 are available. And then I think there's a thing here, I don't know if you have there, called BritBox that they have.
Yeah, I don't know if we have that in Canada.
That's got series 4 and 5. And if anybody's inclined, because none of it's available on Region 1 DVD or anything, I cannot recommend that show enough. And it's the kind of thing that some of those I have watched multiple times, and I am still gleaning things from watching them again. Like, they're so, once you know the end and you go back, you dip in months later and you go, I'm going to watch that one again, you see everything laid out in a different way. They're like Swiss watches of writing and acting, and then of course all these great UK actors that come out to be in these things. But again, Shearsmith and Pemberton, people would know them from The League of Gentlemen.
Oh yeah,
with Mark Gatiss. Then they did Psychoville, which I don't think is streaming anywhere, but it's wonderfully.
Yeah.
It is a Psychoville. They did 2 series, 12 episodes, and a Halloween episode. Very dark, very funny, very strange characters, but much more twisted than anything else that they did. But now they've got Inside Number, and they find this seems to be the groove. This seems to be their, because Mark Gatiss went off with what's his face and did Sherlock. And the Dracula Moffat. This show seems to be their breakout thing, where now it's become this institution, especially in the UK, and that they're getting awards for it and stuff like that. So that's something I'm going to dip into, now and then. That even though I've seen it, a bunch of times. You know what else I put in here, which I'm thinking if I saw this, it was a rental in the 80s and I was probably stoned. Chopping Mall.
My goodness. You bring up Jim Wynorski.
Chopping Mall is streaming, my friend.
Yeah, no, I'm actually happy to announce that I am Facebook friends with Jim Wynorski, and so you can be as well.
Didn't he do
Return of Swamp Thing?
Return of Swamp Thing, yeah.
He did one of my favorites, which is like a Russ Meyer adventure film, The Lost Empire, and I love Jim. Jim is a very talented guy. He worked for Corman. He made like films like Deathstalker 2. His ex-girlfriend is Monique Gabrielle, who I was obsessed with in the late 1980s.
As you do.
As I would be. Yeah, I actually have grown to really love Jim, and yeah.
Well, I tell him I'm gonna dip into Chopping Mall again for the first time.
Chopping Mall is a delight.
And I remember digging
that
it back
segues.
then.
Pardon me? Sorry.
I think I remember digging it back then, but I didn't see it.
I totally dug it back then. I remember getting. First of all, he was one of the few directors that I started to know his style because he has a certain way of doing his credits and that sort of thing. And I knew he was a fan. He used to write for Fangoria and sort of those magazines. In fact, I think actually I was reading Jim recently said something like he faked all his stuff for Fangoria.
Oh, faked all his articles and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And he really is kind of a funny guy. And I think The Lost Empire, his first film, is an amazing first film. But that segues into what I've been watching, which is a series on Shout Factory TV, which is free, shoutfactorytv.com, called Cultastic, Tales from the Trenches with Roger and Julie Corman. And, Roger Corman is in his 90s and still alive and still as lucid as ever, and he's able to talk about the stuff he's made. And I think the world of Roger Corman, and he's done some epic stuff, and it's nice to watch this with him and his wife, who he put in charge of a number of films in the 1970s. And we've discussed Roger Corman before and how he speaks more eloquently than a B movie producer probably should. And
he does. He speaks like, I always thought he speaks like sort of the guy at the health food store, like a new store that you'd come in to get some candles from. His vibe.
He has an educated voice.
Yes, very much. Yeah.
I love this documentary series because it's, he's not going to be around forever. It's amazing that he still is around.
Oh, I'll look into that.
And he hasn't lost his marbles in any way, shape, or form. So you're really listening to him just talk about, everything from, Death Race 2000 to Battle Beyond the Stars to Big Bad Mama. And you're getting these great accounts, and it is a 12-part series. So there is 12 hours of television you didn't know. I hope that you didn't know existed.
Yeah, I'm into that. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And that's on. Did you say that was on YouTube? No, sorry.
No, that is on shoutfactorytv.com. Yeah.
Okay. Yep, I got that. I will look that up. Another movie that's on here that I found that some of this stuff is way back to VHS rental days, that you and I both had that damn, paperback book that we probably carried around and highlighted movies we'd seen and then wrote down the ones we needed to see. And speaking of Shout Factory, because I think that's who put this up, there's a great movie from 1980 called The Ninth Configuration.
Oh my God.
With Stacy Keach and Jason Miller, who was the priest in The Exorcist, and a guy that I became friendly with. I can't think of his damn name, but he was in Cold Blood, and he was, the older guy that was on the first couple seasons of Walking Dead, is one of the leads in it. Oh. And it's written and directed by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist. Scott Wilson.
Oh, Scott Wilson, yeah, absolutely.
and it's like one of those movies. It's like right on the cusp of like it feels like kind of a 70s movie, but it's 1980, and it's still kind of, but it's weird. It's a strange movie, and very good. But I don't want to say, you don't want to say too much about it. But basically, it's all these Vietnam vets are living in they're being treated in this castle, and Stacy Keach is this new army major that's in charge of the castle, and he's going to help with therapies and stuff like that. And it's a strange one, but it's nice to see stuff like that. You know, I really think before this, that stuff was hard to find, like finding these weird movies streaming.
Well,
you know,
and I just want to point out that on Shout Factory as well, the film that you desperately want to watch is Space Raiders.
Oh, shit.
Is available as well.
Oh, shit.
It's right next to Star Crash.
That must be where I watched it from. I must have seen it on that list, put it in my queue.
The other film that's on there, and I say this as a public service announcement to our listeners, What We Left Behind, looking back at Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Not the world's biggest Star Trek The Next Generation fan, not even a big fan of Deep Space Nine, but I did really enjoy that, I think it was called Crisis on the Bridge, Shatner thing about TNG. And my son is growing into a Star Trek The Next Generation fan, despite all my efforts. And so I watched this documentary, and I love documentaries about the making of things.
Oh, yeah.
And as much as I didn't watch a ton of Deep Space Nine. I had to actually look to what it was called. Deep Space Nine. I enjoyed this. It was a nice, interesting look into how the sausage is made.
I was going to watch it. I don't know if we've ever talked about this on this show, but
You were friends with one of the fellows on that show. I thought of that. I don't think we ever talked about it, but you were friends with Dr. Bashir.
I was, yeah. He was through like a friend of a friend kind of thing. We became friends out here when I first moved out to LA, and used to hang out with him, quite a bit. And it was right at the time where he was sort of falling for Nana Visitor.
There's one would.
There's a lot of stuff there that I probably should say off air, but some heart to hearts about that whole thing, and then. So I knew a lot of how that sausage got made, but he also got me on the show a couple times.
You're on Deep Space Nine?
I'm in a couple episodes of Deep Space Nine.
No way!
Yeah, somewhere. And somebody I talked to not like 3 or 4 years ago, I told, because it was a massive Star Trek fan, and he said that one of the characters that I was given a credit for is listed on some like wiki page or something, some Star Trek thing. And I was like, no, I think you're right. He goes, no, I looked it up. You're on that thing. You're part of the whole universe. I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I never had lines, but it was trying to get me my union card.
Yeah.
Get days on shows. And, I was the shortest officer, a security guy in Starfleet probably at that point before by Deep Space Nine.
Well, TV has no like scale. You
right.
know? Yeah.
So I was going to watch it, then I thought, if I start watching this, it's going to remind me of the parties and hanging out with Rene Aubergenois. That's how I met Brian Cox. That's how we became friends, was through Alexander Siddig. He was Siddig Al-Fadil when I first met him, but then he changed to Alexander Siddig. And that's how I first met Brian, because, Alexander Siddig's uncle is Malcolm McDowell.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so his mom is Malcolm's sister.
Mm.
So they all, Malcolm, of course, knew, Brian, and they worked with Lindsay Anderson, and they were pallbearers at Lindsay Anderson's funeral and shit like that. And I don't really see Brian, but I mean, these days, if I were to bump into him anywhere, as I do every few years, he's just got a mind like a steel trap, and it all comes kind of flooding back, and we hung out. I mean, we didn't hang out like. But that's how. Remember, I told you at the time that I went to a screening. The New Beverly had a screening of A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. And
I sat next to Malcolm McDowell throughout the entire. He was my audio commentary throughout the entire film, and it was like.
Wasn't it terrible?
It was one of the greatest experiences of of my life. So I thought I'm going to watch this, but then I thought, that's probably going to make me feel really too nostalgic and too because we all went out one night to the Magic Castle, and Terry Farrell went with, and some things happened, and it's a long story, but I don't remember bits of it. But we had a limo and stuff, and
that sounds like the 90s for me.
It was my mid to late 90s out here in LA, and sort of walking through the gate at the place I lived in a suit and tie with the tie kind of hanging down, and everybody turning around at the pool going, "Where the hell were you last night?" Like, it's a long story. so a lot of, and I want to watch it, but some of it might just hit a little close to home. But I have heard that it's very good. Speaking of documentaries, the Big Dollhouse, CoverGirl Models, and Candy Stripe Nurses are all streaming on Amazon. Just in case anybody cares, I thought I should pass it on.
Dollhouse. That's not a documentary.
Oh, I think you're mistaken. I think it's a documentary told in real time.
Oh, I see.
If you look it up, there's another one here. People are into like horror. There's a movie that was one of these sort of sleeper things that I saw like 10 years ago, and I've recommended it many times, and I sort of forgot about it. It's an Australian movie called Triangle. Did you ever see this movie?
No, I've never heard of that.
I don't want to say too much about it. I'm just going to say at the beginning, a young woman goes to meet her friend on a sailboat, and there's 5 or 6 other people on the boat, and she's clearly been down in the dumps, and he's like, "Come along, we'll have a great time." They go out sailing, and they hit a big wave, and then along comes this big empty, cruise ship tanker sort of thing, and they see someone up on the deck.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all I'm going to say, because if you get that far and you keep going, you will be rewarded. It's very clever, very smart. Not like gory, none of the torture porn shit, because I don't like any of that stuff.
No, me either.
But that's up here too. Battle Beyond the Stars is up here, which I have not seen in many.
One of my hidden treasures is a television series that came out in the 90s, and I couldn't watch it at the time, but it was produced by a friend of mine, my late friend Mike Vraney of Something Weird Video, and it was called Real Wild Cinema, REEL, and it was hosted by Sandra Bernhardt. And Something Weird Video has put every episode available on YouTube. And it's just a nice, documentary type series that shows you clips of, what I would call psychotronic films of the era. And for somebody who didn't have American cable back in 1995, because I lived in Canada, it's so I was so grateful that they put every episode up there to
cool.
watch. Yeah.
Oh, I'll check that.
And it's not something that pops up into your YouTube algorithm, but it's interesting. And as much as I like Sandra Bernhardt, she's not a terrific host of this show. She's a little wooden, which is weird because she's normally pretty damn good in everything I've ever seen her in.
Yeah, definitely. I picked up a while ago the Richard Pryor show.
Yeah.
DVDs, which are out of print. I picked them up at Amoeba. And she's, of course, in the cast. The show only lasted 4 episodes, but she's one of the cast members back in 1978.
I remember that.
Speaking of documentaries, we were suggested, and I put it in my queue just to put it out there. I believe it was Jonathan Robinson, the listener, who made this documentary about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, that's right. He reached out to me, the one guy who doesn't really care for Close Encounters, and but you and of course David Weiner really like that film. So what is it called again?
It's called Who Are You People, and it is streaming on Prime, and it is in my list, and I am going to watch it now that there's some downtime. Ganja and Hess is.
Oh my God, I watched that recently.
And I've never seen it. I know of it, but I've never seen it, and it's in here in my list. And
yeah, that is a vampire movie starring Dwayne Jones of Night of the Living Dead. That is and it's experimentally filmed and written. Really, really fascinating film.
They did a great job on that Shudder documentary. Was it called Horror Noir?
Oh, I loved that. Yeah.
They do a great job of talking about that movie as being kind of a pioneer film. The Larry Cohen documentary, King Cohen, is up here on the...
Is it on Prime? Because it was on Shudder for me, and I absolutely adored it. The other film I want to talk about is Blood... Oh, what is... Oh, my stars. Al Adamson documentary that is now on Prime. Blood...
Oh, the guy, the cartoonist?
No, Al Adamson, Blood and Flesh, the real life and ghastly death of Al Adamson. I adore Al Adamson films. I have for decades. And Sam Sherman, who I talked about earlier. And, of course, the only drawback I have of the film is that Al's murder is more of a subtext than the actual, his films. But I understand that he is...
It's pretty weird. It's
He died in weird circumstances, and that should be half of the film. But, it's a little tough.
The trailer looks great. I haven't seen much of that stuff, and I know you're a big fan of that kind of vibe of horror and stuff. So I actually watched that trailer, and I think it went up because you can rent it. You can rent it for like, $3 kind of thing. So I was just gonna, because it comes in the box set, right? But then you can rent it streaming. You can see it.
I rented it, but then now it's available on Prime to me. So I'm not sure if it's Canada thing.
I think it's on Prime here. Oh, here's two more. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which I'm sure you've seen before. But that's up here on Prime, which is strange because I think I might have rented it 100 years ago. Bob Clark's first movie before
Alan
Black
Ormsby as well, who invented the Hugo doll for Kenner.
Yes. Okay, this is ringing a bell now. Now, do you know about this movie that I've never seen, but it kind of rang a bell, and then I watched the trailer and I went, I don't know why this is familiar. Have you ever seen Dead Kids? The 1980 movie. It's an Australian movie, but
I've never seen that. No.
It takes place in like Middle America, sort of thing. Let me give you the synopsis. Ozploitation classic, one of the most unique shockers of the 80s. Michael Murphy, Dan Shore, who played not Clue, but the other guy in Tron, the middle guy, and Fiona Lewis star in this grisly saga of bizarre experiments, butchered teens, New Zealand doubling for suburban Illinois, and a killer in a Tor Johnson mask. Watch the trailer. There's no way you're not going to want to watch this
I've never heard of that. I will watch the trailer, and I'll probably end up watching it tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned.
I think you probably will. Also, I can't believe this is on Prime. Where Have All the People Gone? From 1974. As avid listeners and Brian know, one of my most traumatic memories from childhood are the deaths of people in Where Have All the People Gone?
That's right. You're finally going to face your fear.
I'm finally going to face my fear. It is so slow and so bad.
It's the one that I've confronted. I think it's on Shout TV as Gargoyles. The
the Italian one?
No, it's Colonel Wilde. It's a TV movie. Colonel Wilde. I think Bernie Casey's in it. And Stan Winston did the effects. That was a captivating TV movie to me when I was like 3 or 4, and it's like it's 8 hours long now.
This was just, I'm like, when are they going to get to the turn of like finding out that no one's around, because Peter Graves and the kids are up in the mountains forever, and then you finally get to the town, and I confronted my fears. No, I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I don't know if you've ever seen A Field in England from 2013. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it, but I don't know it. No.
That's kind of right up Hyler's alley, kind of. I think that you might enjoy. But that's up here, along with what's the one he did before that? Hard Kill or Free Form or Free Time? What's the one that he did? Ben Wheatley. Kill List. Kill List is a very strange, very dark film, kind of horror, kind of about these killers that go around having to kill people. But it's a trip. It's Ben Wheatley stuff is very trippy.
I've never heard of Ben Wheatley. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh yeah, you would dig him. I think
He's adapting. Oh yeah, I did see High Rise.
He did High Rise and he did Free Fire, the one that's like a '70s kind of throwback with what's the guy? One of the guys from Man from Uncle, one of the twins in the
Army Hammer. Yeah,
Army Hammer, and a bunch of other Captain Marvel. She's in that movie.
And Sharita Copley from
Charlotte Copley. Yeah. But these are the movies he did prior. A Field in England is a very trippy black and white, almost kind of druggy movie. But also, oddly enough, Reese Shearsmith is in that as well. Also, this is one I wanted to talk about just in case. It's not really in our sort of wheelhouse, but kind of because of the time frame. The Long Goodbye. Not a big Robert Altman guy, but this is Robert Altman, 1973. Elliot Gould. None more 70s leading man than Elliot Gould. And it's him playing Philip Marlowe in modern LA.
I remember that, yeah.
And it's one of the earliest things that Schwarzenegger shows up in. But Sterling Hayden is in it and some other faces you'd probably recognize. But it's a great script.
What's the movie where... oh, my goodness. Robert Mitchum's playing Philip Marlowe in, like, the 70s.
Oh, it's it's Farewell. I think it's Farewell, My Lovely.
It just doesn't. He's so over the hill. I remember watching that. I skipped school to watch that one.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, yeah, this isn't working. Like, it
doesn't work.
He's past his. Girls are making out with him, and you're like, why? Because they like their dad.
It doesn't. Did we ever talk about The Last of Sheila? Have you ever seen The Last of Sheila?
No.
Because that sounds like a Hyler movie to me too. It's directed by Herbert Ross, but it's written by, I want to say it's written by Richard Benjamin, maybe?
Oh my stars, really?
Okay, but it's James Coburn, Diane Cannon, Richard Benjamin, Ian McShane. It's a mystery thriller, and it takes place on...
What the hell is baby Ian McShane doing in that?
Oh, he's like 12.
Yeah.
But it's about a movie producer who invites friends to come onto his yacht. And it plays with the medium, the film, the whole thing, but with the whole mystery thriller thing. And it's one of these movies that's the kind of thing that, like on the Godfrey pot, it's the kind of thing that they would suddenly mention and go, oh, that's an underrated mystery type thing.
Okay,
but it's 1973, and it's kind of a one of a kind, and it's a really great cast.
Here's something that I'm dying to rewatch, but no, it's awful. The Nude Bomb.
Oh wow, yeah, it is. It's awful.
I know it's awful. I knew it was awful at 10. I loved Get Smart. Get Smart used to be on every day at like 6 on Chex TV, and it is a classic television series. But yeah, The Nude Bomb. I remember just liking it because it was Get Smart, the movie, even though it was terrible. But I haven't seen it since probably I was 12, and it can't be good, right?
I saw it maybe a decade ago or so, and for me it was about Pamela Hensley and thinking about seeing the poster for The Nude Bomb. We were waiting in line for The Empire Strikes Back. That's what I think of.
Well, there are scenes in it like where they go through Universal Studio. Obviously, it was done very on the cheap.
The Jaws ride, but there's no nudity in it. That was my other hang-up. But when is Pamela Hensley going to get her kit off in this movie? Have you ever seen a film called Invasion from Inner Earth, 1974?
Yes.
You have, because that sounds like
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? I just looked at it. It's unavailable, apparently. It was in my queue, but now it's unavailable. But I put it in my queue. I thought that could be something. 1974.
Yeah, I can't remember it. I just know I've seen it.
Yeah.
Because, I have.
And we've talked about Pontypool, right?
Yeah. Well, you and I texted about Pontypool. Growing up, one of my dad's friends lived in Pontypool, so I was there all the time.
That's right. That is up on YouTube. You can watch that, I think, for free. I think it's got Spanish subtitles, but you can watch it for free.
That's a Bruce McDonald film, and his best film to me is Hardcore Logo.
Yes, and that's what I remember you texting or putting on Facebook or something. So here's one that I put aside, and I'm dying to see, and one of these nights I will get to it, but I bet you've seen it, called Poor Pretty Eddie. Have you ever seen this?
No.
Okay. Here's the cast. Leslie Uggams.
Okay.
Shelley Winters, and Michael Christian. Here's the synopsis. A jazz singer's car breaks down near an isolated lodge run by a faded starlet and a homicidal Elvis impersonator. It's from 1975, and I'm freaking in. That you had me at Elvis impersonator. I am completely in.
Oh my God, it has Ted Cassidy and Slim Pickens in it.
Oh, you're looking up? Speaking of, I got another one here for you. Mad Doctor of Blood Island.
I got all those.
Streaming. Yeah, well, I got this up here because I'm going to finally see what you've been going on about all these years.
Prepare to not understand what I see in these things. I did watch Deliverance a week ago with my wife as well. It popped up.
It holds up. I got to say, I saw it about 10 years ago again, and it.
Have I told this story before? Where one of my close friends, about 20 years ago, his dad died, and that's what he was given was a VHS copy of Deliverance, and they said, "This is your father's favorite movie."
What?
Yeah, a good friend of mine. His dad was a bit of a enigma to him. Like, Dad kind of buggered off early on in his life, and they tried to bond as a lot of people do. And when his dad passed away, his stepmom went, "This is your father's favorite movie," and I
holy shit.
And he has been kind of like, what does that mean?
That might be the only time that someone's been gifted Deliverance where there wasn't a joke attached to it.
No, it was, and he said, he's joked with me about it over the years. I don't know what that meant.
I'll tell you what else.
Why is that my dad's favorite movie?
They have up on. Well, he's clearly a Burt Reynolds fan.
Yeah, that's where we went with it.
That's up on Prime, which I have not watched yet, but I am dying to watch. They have the December 1954 live BBC telecast of George Orwell's 1984.
Very cool.
Just,
doesn't that start like Peter Cushing or something?
Peter Cushing is in it, and they have it on Prime. You got to look for it, but it's called BBC Television's live production of George Orwell's 1984, and I cannot wait to watch it because I've read about it for so many years.
Are you a big fan of the John Hurt version? Because I am.
I like the John Hurt version. It's not fun. It's certainly not fun.
No, it's not 100%. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's not something you want to pop in on a Saturday night and really get the blood going. But yeah, it's great. To me, it's like a. I mean, there's only been two versions, right? The TV one, the movie, the TV one here, the movie one, and then the that one, and that seems to me the definitive one to be the John Hurt one.
I really like the John Hurt one, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, it's dark. It's very dark. Richard Burton's last movie, I think, that movie.
You're right.
And of course, great single by Eurythmics, "Sex Crime,"
which made no sense. But
made no sense. But, I still played it like mad. And just a ton of other stuff. This list goes on forever. But the other thing that I've been watching a lot that's given me comfort, I don't know why, Count Duckula. Count Duckula was...
Really?
Count Duckula is an animated series, a spin-off character from the original Danger Mouse.
Yeah.
Which was done by Cosgrove Hall, the animation house, Cosgrove Hall, who did all the animation for the Kenny Everett video show of the.
That's why it feels so familiar.
The Captain Kremen stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, Danger Mouse is a very smart show to begin with. I mean, the writing on that and the jokes, very mature, that Muppet Show thing where one joke was for the kids and then three jokes were for the adults. And stuff.
I bought that box set for my kids on your recommendation and drove them somewhere far playing Danger Mouse, and it was not well received.
Well, it's not for everyone. There's a line. Watch Duckula is a spin-off about this duck. He's a vampire, Count Duckula.
Oh, I've seen him. Yeah.
Okay, so he doesn't eat people. He's a vegetarian. There was a mix-up, and he's the first in his lineage that doesn't eat people. But it's so smart. Like, there was a line today where somebody said, he said, "Well, can you give me?" What did he say? Can you give me a reading, or can you give me a? Oh shit, I can't think of it now. It was like a quote. Can you give me a quote? about a construction job. He said, Duck says, "Can you give me a quote?" And the guy says, "Oh, I don't know, once more unto the breach." And he says, No. I mean, can you give me an idea of what it's going to cost? It's loaded with jokes like that. But then it also sort of plays on, the stereotype of an American tourist coming to England, or he goes to a hotel in one of them, and the character is clearly Basil Fawlty, and someone doing a John Cleese voice as the guy that runs this hotel, sort of thing.
That's fun.
But they're very fun. They're very funny. And I had the complete series on Region 2 sitting around for a while, and so I've been popping that on, and that's been giving me some joy. But and then I'm going to redo Doom Patrol. That's on my list.
Yeah, that is a wonderful series. The other thing I wanted to mention was Toei Tokatatsu World Official YouTube channel is also live, and that has a wealth of Japanese television programs from the 70s and 80s and looks like the 90s.
It has all those, like all the original Power Ranger stuff too, right? Isn't
well, no, they're not allowed to play that in the United States. They can't play Dynaman and that sort of thing. But they dropped a number of television series that we've never been able to really watch legally in this country, like Space Cop Gavan, Kikaider. Kikaider's on there. Inazuman, Winspector. There's some interesting stuff there. It's a wonderful thing, to be perfectly honest with you. They've taken a lot of properties that don't have worldwide recognition and said, "Here, have some free episodes."
Tell me what Kikaider is all about. Like, I know what that is, but
he is a robot who drives around a motorcycle and has a guitar, and he occasionally plays that guitar, but then when he fights aliens, the guitar disappears.
So it's a documentary.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I believe it's by Ron Mann. Yeah.
But is it the same time frame as Kamen Rider?
Yeah, around that same time. Yeah. And I've been, having watched about 13 episodes of Kamen Rider on my bike now, there seems to be a pattern forming. It appears that Shocker only does shit around Kamen Rider's neighborhood, even though they're a worldwide organization. Every child they pick on is either fatherless or motherless. And even though they know where Kamen Rider lives, they don't seem to show up at his house at any point in time. It's falling under the social mores of G.I. Joe versus Cobra or any of this stuff where, like, yeah, it failed this week, but why don't you just do this and another thing next week? You probably succeed, But no, they just abandoned.
Do you ever pretend? Do you pretend when you're on your bike as you're watching Kamen Rider that you might be Kamen Rider?
That's private information, Jace. I just pretend I'm not 49 years old on a stupid stationary bike watching a children's show in Japan.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And listen, I get the sense that this will not be the only time in the next 47 weeks of quarantine that we do this, where we dip into what we're viewing and listening to,
but this is probably the only one where the madness doesn't kick in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We'll 5 weeks from now, we'll just be repeating everything we've said
If
tonight.
you've seen the movie The Lighthouse, it's going to be a lot like that.
That's what it's going to be. That's exactly what it's going to be. The audio version of The Lighthouse.
But I get to be the Green Goblin.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take Pattinson.
Yeah.
He can sing, that guy. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. So Batman's going to have a beautiful voice?
He's actually got a very nice voice. I watched that sci-fi one that he did, a trippy movie. I forget what it's called. Out in Space, or I'm in Space, or Dead Space.
I watched a movie called Good Time, or something like that with him in it.
Yeah, he's great in it.
I forgot he was in it.
Yeah.
While I was watching it. That made me realize that, he might be able to act. And that
same thing with the sci-fi one that he did.
Yeah.
Which is a very strange movie. But at the end, the credits rolled, and I'm hearing this haunting kind of Bowie-esque tune, but it didn't sound like Bowie, the voice, but I'm like, who is that singing? And then when I got to the end of it, it's like, it's Robert Pattinson. I said, he's got a nice voice. I'm developing a crush. The other thing that's on Prime that I dipped into that I hadn't seen literally since it came out that I'm just like, oh my God, did they show this to kids? Jim Henson's the storyteller. Can we talk about this for a second?
I'm a bit
Gravy.
unarmed, but Jim Henson always kind of drove that line between
He did.
awesome and frightening. And
He did.
yeah.
He had a weird darkness that ran through a lot of his stuff. It's hard to believe the guy that did the Muppets or the Muppet movie, which, has some dark humor in it here and there. It's a little tough.
You'd bring me to a point of recommending a YouTube channel called Defunctland. And Defunctland, my wife and I got into because he's obsessed with old Disneyland rides that are no longer functioning, and rides that failed in other countries and rides that killed people. But he did a beautiful, professional job on a Jim Henson documentary. Ooh. And if you want to get to know the man, I would really recommend Defunctland channel. And there is hundreds of hours of stuff depending on who you are. And I was watching Defunctland yesterday.
Oh, wow.
I believe it's hosted by a guy by the name of Daniel Perger, and he is a tremendous talent in terms of documentaries. You just have to check out his channel, but his Henson documentary is amazing.
But he does. I've always thought that about Henson. He's like that, again in that.
But I'm going to put this out there.
Yeah.
Weren't the 70s, growing up, the Gen X? Wasn't life kind of like that? Wasn't shit a little scary for us?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a perfect... Hang on, let me just grab Bowie here, because he's going to mute me. He's taking off.
Yeah, he's got a tinkle, does he?
Take off. This goes back to part of the epic phone call with Alex the other night. He introduced his 12-year-old daughter, 12-year-old daughter, to Time Bandits for the first time.
Wow, yeah, I was 12 when Time Bandits came out.
Well, he's thinking, she's got some interesting taste, and he's introduced her to stuff over the years, and she knows, all the DC characters and all that stuff that you'd know if you were his kid or whatever. So he's thinking, now's a good time to show her Time Bandits. And he said, about halfway through, she turned to him and said, who am I supposed to be rooting for here in this movie? Who's it? What's... and she wasn't traumatized, but he jokingly was she was practically traumatized by the end of it, and then at the end, of course, spoiler, I don't want to give anything away, but at the end of Time Bandits, it's holy shit, is that really how it ends?
Yeah, it's got a dark ending.
And we were talking about it, and he said, that it's so. He goes, I hadn't seen it in a long time, but he said, you realize how slow it is, how much it takes its time, and how strange it is. And he's I don't even know how you'd pitch that movie today.
I had the Marvel comic.
Okay, so there you go. So it was a Marvel comic. We in America anyway, it was there's something to do with Monty Python. It's not really a Python movie, but it kind of is, because it's Michael Palin and Terry Gilliam and John Cleese is in it, and the commercials and stuff. And then of course, I went. I remember sitting in the theater digging it. I don't remember being sort of, oh my God, but it was I was 11.
Yeah.
And it's dark. It's freaking
probably
dark.
10 or 11 as well, now that I think of it.
So
it is dark, and it ends dark. The kids' parents die, don't they, at the end?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And it's dark, and
they're
horrible. They're horrible people, horrible characters. They don't give a shit about their kid. But it's one of those things where you're yeah, that is the difference. Your kids are of a certain age. I've got a friend who's got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're doing the whole quarantine thing, obviously, and they're going a little bonkers. And I jokingly was I got to tell you, if I was 11 or 12 and this happened, I hated school. I would have found stuff to do. I would have had maybe reread my Target books, or read my comics, or my hardback books, or whatever I could do. So it's great that right now there's all this streaming stuff and all this content that people can busy themselves with, but we would have managed, obviously. It would have been a different time or whatever. But that was a great sort of indicator of it's not, there's a darkness that's through a lot of stuff that we grew up with. Yeah. That we just sort of, it didn't.
We kind of accepted it.
just kind of accepted it. Like, yeah, it's fucking, life. His parents died. It's life shit.
It's Earth, and there was a nuclear war, and we're all dead. All right.
I was more bummed out by the end of Time Bandits that, like, Connery shows up again as the fireman.
Yeah, Agamemnon, yeah.
And then all the firemen take off. His parents blow up in the front yard, and the firemen all right, take care of it later. And they just drive off. Connery says goodbye, and they drive off. And the kids, I'm like, why don't you just go with Connery? He was pretty cool in the movie. Just go with him. But they don't seem to care that this orphan is left on the on the front lawn. His parents died. But stuff like, we just sort of like, but I don't know. I think you have to be much more careful these days with showing such things. So the Storyteller is 1988, and there's dismemberments and heads coming off and brains coming out and just weird, creepy shit that I don't know if this was aimed at kids directly, but it's pretty weird. I just
remember seeing it and going like, yeah, this is crossing that, like, it's vacillating on that line of entertaining and terrifying, and Jim Henson did that an awful lot. And
he did. I think what he did was he embraced, if you think about the original, like, Grimm's fairy tales and all these things that get, morphed and changed over the years, they're really dark. Lots of babies get killed or thrown off of cliffs or, kidnapped and smothered, or, these folk tales, they're all very dark. And a lot of this Storyteller, you realize these are adapted from Russian folk tales and shit. And you got John Hurt telling the story, and the dog is a Muppet.
Yeah.
And the dog is being kind of, it's fun, tell a story. And then, the next scene, someone's head gets chopped off. And you're like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. But I'm going to watch them all probably because something tells me I'll have some time to get through them.
Yeah.
But we'll make it. Let's do this again next week. Let's give more content because no one's got anywhere to go and they'll be stuck listening to us.
Yeah, well, I'll come up with some stuff we can talk about. And
they don't have a choice.
Yes. Well, I don't think we're forcing people to listen to us.
I think we are.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to try. So there you go. That should be a lot of stuff to keep everybody busy if you don't have anything to do, or families, I suppose.
We should hopefully provide you with a lot of distraction.
Yes. And like we said, once it's up, or Brian does all that work, let us know what you think, and let us know what you guys are binging.
Yeah,
and watching.
Please give us distraction. We've shown you what we're doing, but I would love to know what things exist on the internet that are entertaining you.
Yes.
I just threw the Pod Stallions group, Dr. Horrible's House of Terrible. I can't remember how this is pronounced. Is on.
Oh, the Coogan Show.
The Coogan Show. Yeah, I've never actually watched that, and it appears to be on Vimeo.
It is. I got that at like Region 2 when it hit years ago, and you know exactly what it's trying to do. There's a couple of episodes that are great. That are, there's one called "And Now the Fearing," which is such.
The one I watched was called "Lesbian Vampires Lovers of Lust," and I know where it was supposed to be going, but it wasn't that funny. It's
not that funny, but the titles are great. But there's the "And Now the Fearing," and there's another one that I can't think. Coogan's in every one of them, and the best thing about it is, the second best thing about it is Coogan playing a very different character in every one of them. He's very different in each one, but they're hit or miss. And there's a couple that are quite good.
Yeah.
And then the really truly best thing about it is his opening and closing, his bookends as Dr. Terrible. He is unrecognizable as Dr. Terrible, and you see him and you go, I want him for the entire show. I want Dr. Terrible to be in the entire thing because it's such a weird concoction. But that really is the best thing about the show, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hit or miss show for me, but it's also like these are things that I've always wanted to watch.
Yeah. You got to watch it.
Yeah, you just sit there and go like, well, I got the time, so.
And Mark Gatiss shows up, and Simon Pegg shows up in one too, I think.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, like or maybe just post-Spaced, I think, maybe, for Simon Pegg.
Wow.
Yeah, check that out. And let us know what you think, everybody.
Yeah.
If you're still with us.
So give us some suggestions and let me know so I don't have to watch more recipe videos on YouTube.
All right, well, hang in there,
certainly
everybody.
don't want to watch Tiger King.
No, I don't want to hear about Tiger King. I don't want to get a note about Tiger King. I don't want to hear anybody praise Tiger King.
I watched one episode and went, I'm done.
I want nothing to do with it.
And I started getting like emails from Netflix. Brian, you haven't finished Tiger King, and it's like, is that a requirement of this? You know,
I don't care if at the end you find out, who Jack the Ripper was and what happened to Hoffa in the finale. I don't care. I didn't even really know what it's about. I know that they're horrible people, but just the fact that it's about tigers in captivity, I'm like, no.
To me, it was everything is awful and every person in this is bad.
And I don't know what it says that it's like the #1 show on Netflix right now. Why this has become a culture at this time of all times. I know we don't get political on this show, but at this time, in the midst of everything, why is that capturing everyone's imagination?
Because I think it's just distraction. I would purposely say it was just pure distraction. Well,
listen, I can think of plenty of other ways to get my distraction. Thank you very much.
Oh, most definitely. Russ Meyer has several films on YouTube.
Yes, exactly. I was talking about poetry, but I can do that too. That's fine.
No.
But yeah, I don't get that at all. Have you seen any of the Windsors, by the way? Because you know Harry Enfield, right? You like Harry Enfield stuff?
No.
It's again 6 episodes a season, but it's a British making fun of the royals.
Oh, I see.
Just vicious, just absolutely brutal. But Harry Enfield plays Prince Charles, and he's just wonderful in it, and that's I would recommend.
I've been watching Penny Dreadful with my daughter.
Great, because the new season's about to kick off.
Yeah, there's some awkward moments between me and my daughter watching that. But we've been through some stuff. When we went to go see the movie Bugsy Malone, there was a burlesque dancer before. And I remember,
at the theater?
At the theater, yeah. The theater always has event nights. Like, I took her to see Russ Meyer's Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, and it was hosted by a drag queen. But my daughter is very interested in such things, and that wasn't a problem. But it was the burlesque show that really kind of like, wow, we've been through some stuff, and we're going to be fine. We were joking about that, actually, watching some of the, like, fast-forwarding through some of the sex scenes in Penny Dreadful. Like, yeah, this isn't as bad as the burlesque show.
Wow. Okay.
Like we've been through the car wash together.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
it's got some darkness to it. It's I think that first season's fantastic.
I love that. I love that series very, very much. I eventually, grew to love Patti LaPointe, and one of the things I find just interesting about that show is it's so bloody dark, and the amazing performances in that program. Like your favorite actor of all time there, Timothy Dalton.
So the man should be on
the man. Show.
He should be on the Mount Rushmore of geekdom.
Yeah.
He is,
and he's in Doom Patrol, which I've also been enjoying.
And he's in Doom Patrol. The man is a legend, absolutely legend. He's great. And Eva Green is fantastic in it, like just achingly good.
I love her. I cannot get over Rory Kinnear.
Rory Kinnear,
creature, who's Roy Kinnear's son.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, and I think he's in the new show.
Is he really?
I think he plays a character in the new show.
Oh, okay. So it's I don't know. That show ended too quickly for me.
It absolutely did. And I said at the time, I bet they're going to bring it back. They will bring it back somehow, put it in different setting. But I feel like he got it. They sort of Showtime going to say, we've done enough, we're done. And his story was, I told the story I wanted to tell and I wrapped it up. But I don't think that's true because he put his heart and soul into that show and those scripts and stuff. But I think that like every network, like HBO, when Watchmen ended, it was like, oh no, we're done. It's a one-off. Well, then a month later, they're like, well, maybe we could do something else because there's nobody has a Game of Thrones. Everyone's paying for
Watchmen's done though, isn't it?
What's that?
Watchmen's done though, isn't it?
Watchmen's done, but the vibe when it finished was kind of like it's one and done. And I'm like, HBO they need more. They don't have a lot of stuff. They don't have a lot of must-see stuff. And Watchmen became such a focal point while it was on that I'd be shocked if they didn't do another one. So I think they're trying to get Penny Dreadful to be Showtime's sort of Game of Thrones kind of show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, good stuff, man.
This is fun. I hope we provide entertainment. We both have to go, so thanks everybody, and talk to you soon.
Stay safe, and we're sending good vibes to everybody.
Absolutely, the Be Well vibes. Take care.
Be well. All right.